this. Why do bullies bully beside power?
I'll go ahead and take that. It's a wide variety of reasons. And before I actually answer that, there's never a reason for bullying. I just want to be clear with all parents and educators out there. There's never a reason for bullying. A child doesn't invite or deserve bullying, so there's not a reason for bullying. There's only motivations. So you get,
Motivation on the bully's part?
Right. That's all there is.
Jealousy?
It's jealousy, vendetta, wants social currency or power. Some of the other reasons might be is that at some point that child, and it comes back to jealousy, has had something that they wanted, whether it was a friend or money or whatever. But sometimes it
prowess on the football field.
Correct. Sometimes it is simple as that they are impulsive and compulsive. Very frequently, and if you talk to many experts about this, bullies have some emotional issue, and they're just impulsive or compulsive, and they just are acting out.
I want to interject something here. I have a group of friends, let's say, and one of the girls is a bully. She's a mean girl. And mean girls and bullies do grow up, and I think if the compulsive behavior isn't checked by the parents, and I can tell hers would have never recognized it, they grow up to be mean girls and bullies.
That's right.
And I handle her pretty well. Yeah. But it's disappointing to me that it carries over into adulthood, and we're boomers. You know what I mean? We're not 21 or...
Right. You raise a good point. It is unchecked behavior. All parents of bullies are not bad parents. They simply have let a behavior go unchecked. And the recipe for a bully is unchecked bad behavior, no accountability, and no respect equals bully.
Maybe their parents don't realize, or maybe their parents can't accept the fact, and they think the sun rises and sets on the kid.
That's right.
A little too much to make consequences.
In our book, we talk about that frequently, is that there has to be teachable consequences for bullying, not punishment.
That's what I want to know about. I want to know in a minute about the teachable consequences. I want to ask you something. Why doesn't ignoring the bully work?
Because when you ignore a bully, if I'm bullying you and you simply ignore it, you're giving me a permission slip to bully you more. You're saying, it's okay with me.
I might not ignore it, but I might give you the finger.
Right. And honestly, that's probably not the appropriate response for a child, right?
Yeah,
but the
being
response,
facetious.
right, but the response should be to let the bully know, this is not acceptable. What you are doing is not acceptable. Whether it is a look, or take them off to the side and say, hey, please don't do that, it's annoying to me. Or if you just say it really directly to them. Because there's different types of bullies, different approaches will work for different types of bullies. So let them know.
How do you feel that they steal a kid's childhood?
In many ways, they take away their innocence and their trust. Because that's what the difference between being an adult and a child is that when
innocence
you're an adult,
and trust.
Yeah, you trust and you're innocent. And when you become older, you become more skeptical and cynical for good reasons, and it protects us as adults, right? But you want your child to have innocence and be able to trust people. And when they take that away, it's heartbreaking.
The whole thing is heartbreaking. Tell us about that Saturday in November when your son Tim finally came and told you the truth.
Absolutely. It takes my breath away when I think about it, but... what happened was my husband and I were having kind of a standard Saturday morning, coffee, that kind of thing, chatting. My son burst into the room and said, I've been lying to you. Typically, my child's not perfect. He has lied in the past, just to be clear, but is not a standard behavior. So, rushed into the room and said, everyone in the school doesn't respect me, and everyone is saying mean things about me and making up stories about me. Kind of went right through my heart.
No kidding. It's going through mine.
Yeah. I just a jab to the heart. So sat down, talked about it, told us everything that was going on, a lot of gossip. And going back to what Jackie was saying, bullying is very different now. It's very strategic. So what happens is one primary bully becomes a leader and recruits other bullies. And then they develop a bully plan. And I'm not exaggerating in any way, shape, or form. Children do develop a plan. Joe, you get them in the locker room.
No.
Susie,
this
you get
blew
them
my
on the
mind
bus.
when I read it in the book.
Johnny, you get him in the lunchroom.
Come
and
on.
then let's spread these rumors about him. It is. It's strategic. It's as if he is a business consultant. And this is how it's spread. So back to that Saturday morning, my son said to me, Mom, I just don't know how they know all this weird stuff, because there were some inklings of truth, when kids trip and fall in second grade and, cry. That might have been truthful, but all of this other gossip was not true. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the conversation, one of the things that was particularly heartbreaking is he said to me, "Hey, Mom, I have a great idea. I think I can solve this. What if we pretend I'm in a horrible, horrible accident?
I know, I read that.
And I come back as a different child in 3 months." And of course, you can imagine the stream of questions we had was, "Are you okay? Or do you want to be in an accident? Do you want to hurt yourself? Do you want to hurt anybody else?" And after we got through to it, it was an 11-year-old's, this was a few years ago, an 11-year-old's idea of how to solve the problem. He wasn't interested in hurting himself or anybody else. He just was trying to be creative. How can we get beyond this in a way where no one else gets hurt, including me? So
Tell us about your solution, Tim's solution.
Over the course of 6 months in his 6th grade year, worked very closely with the assistant principal and all of his teachers to watch it for him carefully. What it ultimately took is a final solution at the end of that year where I wrote a letter where there was about 13 kids that were continuing to pick on him. The assistant principal brought them into his office, presented this letter which indicated cease and desist in every way, shape, and form. No more talking about it, no more talking to friends, no more recruiting people, no more, no more, no more.
Mm-hmm.
Had to be presented to that child's parent that night, signed and brought back. Each child's parent was called. So the learning there, and we talk about this in the book, there's lessons learned, right? So in the book at the end of each chapter, one of the lessons in one of the early chapters is the parents must be called after the first bullying episode or it will continue, I guarantee it. They must be called. So in that particular instance, the bullying did stop for my son, although then he was a bit of a pariah. Now he did, just to be clear, had some very good friends that stood by him and stuck with him and are still good friends today.
Mm-hmm.
So that my son was lucky that way. Many bullied children don't have good friends that stick by him.
They're too chicken.
Right.
They don't want to be picked on.
Right. Exactly.
You speak of consequences. What would you girls like to see being done along these lines of teachable consequences more than punishable consequences?
So I'll start off, and I know Jackie has some great ideas too. So the first two things that I think are important are for a child that is bullying to introspect and reflect on what they've done, and then understand why it's bad for the bullied child and why it's bad for them, the bully, why it's bad for them, because it is bad for your life. We'll throw you out a statistic that will kind of curl everybody's hair in the room. 60% of known bullies at age, by 7th grade, if they're a known bully, 60% of them will be through our legal justice system.
No kidding.
Across all socioeconomic status. So you're kind of guaranteeing that you're ramping up towards criminal behavior.
How do you make a kid reflect, though, if he's a bully?
Right.
Like, he could be sitting there going, okay, I'm going to reflect, and then just be thinking...
Right. And there are ways. So, for example, instead of giving him that detention, make him research it. Be with him. Make him research bullying and what it does. Make him understand that when you're in 7th grade and you're bullying, you want to talk to a criminal that just is in a gang. He's been in a county jail for 3 years. Why don't you talk to him and why don't you understand and provide questions for that gang member to say, hey, it's not fun in jail. The scar I got, not super fun.
These tattoos I got?
Yeah, not good in job interviews.
And Jackie?
Well, one of the things that I always ask, and we talk to a lot of people, and it's in the book, about making sure that the parents of the bully actually do know. So when you're talking to the school, making sure that you follow up with them in like, let's say, Teacher X, I'm going to call you tomorrow after you talk to the parents of Susie. And then I want to find out what's going to happen and what the parents of Susie said. So I'll call you tomorrow at 3 p.m. after school. So that follow-up is a very important piece. And then to find out what the consequence was at that time for the child, if they had to write something. And one of the things we talk about in the book is having steps. So if the first time they need to research it and actually have a pretty steep consequence, other than just getting that out of school suspension, because we found out by doing our research is that kids were actually loving that out of school suspension. In a couple cases, there were like a 10-day school suspension. They didn't, so they weren't allowed to. Their homework's not due, so they weren't doing their homework. The parents didn't, were still having.
Parents weren't keeping on top of the situation.
So all they did was play with their video games all day long, and that's what we figured out. It's like, well, it's not that bad of a consequence. That was just
It was a reward.
Yeah, it really was.
It's a rewarding bullying behavior.
Mm-hmm. so that the consequence be at school. And I know, again, that's difficult with so many things that are going on with our schools, but there's a lot of times during planning periods that maybe